And unmuting helps. All right. No matter how many times you do these things, you forget some little thing like that. But yeah. Well, welcome. Hello, Sharon and Antares.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
And welcome everyone for joining today's webinar, where we're going to be talking about the roadmap to Microsoft Copilot success. It's Copilot readiness and governance preparation, all the stuff that you should have been doing or have already done. But we're going to talk about what that looks like around Copilot specifically. And so, yeah, excited to go through it. So Sharon, hey, I'll let you drive the first couple slides here.
All right. So, yeah, thanks for joining today. And here's just a little bit about Smarter Consulting. We have grown tremendously. I started this as me doing a little bit of SharePoint consulting in 2017. And here we are 7 years later with a ton of people and a ton of credentials and a ton of partners. And it's fantastic. And so, so here's a little bit of information about us. We're a woman-owned business. We focus on the M365 stack, but not just that. But we do that. I would say most of our time is spent around the M365 stack. We do a lot around modern work. We're becoming AI experts. So we're really helping people to understand what AI is. We really focus on quality. So we really want to make sure that we're partnering with you for the long term. We're making sure that what you're getting is just really great value and great interactions with our team. We build really great relationships, long-term relationships. And our goal really is to have competitive value. And basically what that means is you're getting more than what you're paying for. And we've created these 4 pillars. Like I said, we're growing. I think there might even be another one in the works behind the scenes. But right now we have our Smarter Consulting, which is where this was all started. And there's some of our services. You can find that on our website as well. We've got a Smarter Learning channel where we really revolve around training. We're building out the Smarter Governance model, which is exactly what we're talking about today. And then we've also started our new little baby on the corner, which is Smarter Apps. And we're rolling out some of our brand new apps that we've been building for probably 10 or 15 years easily. But now we're like making it formal.
And if for folks that haven't visited the website in a while, says, yeah, we just launched last week the new page around the Smarter app. So some of the products that are available for sale today, and there's a number of others that are for specific clients that we've built out. And so you could read all about them. They're all listed there. But we can go and deploy those and customize them for your organization today. All right, so a little bit about us. So Sharon and Terrace, and then I'll wrap it up.
All right. Well, you kind of met me a little bit. I've been doing this for, it says 25 plus. I think next year I'll hit 30 years getting paid to be in technology officially. Along the way, I have worked a ton with Microsoft and just kind of collected badges right and left. But a lot of that just means that I really get to sit in between the people who make the product and the people who use the product all day, every day. And if you want to be able to get a hold of me, there's my info, and feel free to follow me on all the socials.
Hi, I'm Antares Leask, and I bring kind of a unique perspective because I am newish to the IT world. I taught for 23 years. I'm coming from an education background, and that's why I love talking about Microsoft Copilot, is because when generative AI dropped in the education world, it was immediately demonized, and I really enjoy showing educators and everyone how Copilot can really be used for good and to help with equity and inclusion.
Although reading the stories about people using it for evil is kind of entertaining as well. So
I have some of those stories too.
And I'm Christian Buckley. So I've been working with Smarter Consulting the last, almost 6 months now, I think, but have known Sharon for years and years, and known Antares a few years. I'm like good friends with her husband, known him for a long time. But I've been in this space in tech my entire career, which is around 33 years. Like it was my second official job. Was moving over to a tech company. And so I've just been involved in various, business analysts and project management roles, At the very beginning of my career, a lot of tech writing, that kind of stuff. But project management, program management, started a couple of software companies, got into the Microsoft ecosystem, went to work for Microsoft for a couple of years back at the launch of Office 365. And I often share this, but like my first couple presentations as a Microsoft employee were on the topic of governance. So yeah, it's been, that was back in 2006, 2007, my first topics in this arena. But I've been in information management years before that. So I'd been talking governance and running governance bodies back in the mid to late 90s at various companies, starting with the phone company, Pacific Bell. So yeah, it's been in the space a long time. I'm excited to talk about this and the latest iteration for Copilot.
It's good to be home.
So when we start this, I know, everybody watching this, I mean, you're going to know the basics of this, but just to kind of cover some ground for folks that it is still relatively new. I mean, when we talk about Copilot, Microsoft's branded AI endeavors, and they're kind of curbing the naming everything Copilot, and somebody came to their senses and said, oh, we need to differentiate in what AI looks like in different parts of the different platforms and services. But it's around automating routine tasks, enhancing productivity, and then leveraging knowledge in the secure enterprise fashion. And I think that's the main difference for people that are new to generative AI and thinking about these various tools that are out there. OpenAI has their ChatGPT, like every platform out there. Google has their AI. They're formerly as Bard. It got rebranded, didn't it? I don't use it, but yeah. Anyway, played with it.
Yes, I can remember the name.
Yeah. So there's a number of things, and there's been out there for years. Like I was a Jasper user, Jasper AI for a couple of years, and some really cool stuff that's out there. The key difference with Copilot is that it is primarily based on your data, meaning that when you train it, when you teach it on your, like I have a private SharePoint Copilot that I put all of my own personal, my company financial data into. And so I can then go in and no one else can see it. Microsoft can't even see the data. It's all encrypted, but I can then start getting insights, getting data out of that content. And I never have to worry about that content then being shared up into the cloud with the rest of the world. If you're using the consumer-based platforms, then you are leveraging the internet's knowledge, and everything you share with the model also gets shared with the internet, which, yeah, it's probably not what you want to do with your intellectual property.
And that's a good point about scoping, not only that your information isn't being shared, but that you can also scope the search to certain areas so employees aren't pulling things into Copilot that they should not be pulling into Copilot.
Right. So between divisions, right.
And then after that, it also honors policies and permissions. So it has access to your entire tenant. It's limited at the tenant boundaries, but yeah, it then honors policy and permissions on the way to use. So they, as long as everything's set up right, should only see what they're supposed to see.
We're not going to really get into like the key scenarios of using Copilot. That's not what this presentation is about. But you can kind of infer some of that, some of those use cases, those business cases out of like these primary 5 areas. These are like what Copilot does. So it is an AI powered assistant. It does have that integration in with Microsoft 365. It's that, in fact, if you've seen demos early on when they announced Copilot, I think some of the most exciting demos were around Excel. So Copilot for Excel. The whole thought of putting this complex, massive spreadsheet of all this data that's in there, and then asking Copilot, tell me what are the 3 trends that I need to be looking at with this data. And that's part of why I started experimenting with my financial data over in SharePoint Copilot, was so that I could start to look at those kinds of insights. And is there something that I'm just not seeing here? Task automation, of course, being able to go in and train, especially with the announcements around Copilot agents, to be able to have the autonomous agents going and running things and doing things, for agents to be able to recognize, hey, I can't do what you're asking, but I know these 3 other agents that can do that, and be able to go and call on other autonomous agents to do more complex automation. It has that data in context awareness. So again, because it's tied to the tools that you're using every day, your SharePoint, your Teams, the conversations, the meetings you're in, your email, what you're doing with PowerPoint, with Word, with Excel, kind of all those different tools. It's aware of where the data is, of specifically what you're asking for. And then that enhanced collaboration. So it can help you identify and better prioritize based on, again, who has access to that system, and be aware of all the other data that's feeding into that system behind the firewall. So within your organization, it's not going out to the consumer world.
And I like that the very first point is that Copilot is an assistant, because a lot of people hear AI and they immediately jump to Skynet or the Matrix, and
not yet. Couple years.
Not yet. But I really like the emphasis on, this is your Copilot. This is not you. It's not going to start piloting the plane for you. You still have to be there. And I think that's really important. I love the quote that's been going around a lot about, AI isn't going to take your job, but people who know how to use AI might.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we're not going to get too far into use cases here, but I do know a lot of people are always asking, but what can I actually do with this? And I think the key to remember is, in the same way that search is how to find the information or, find your content, Copilot allows you to do or take action on your information and your content. So a lot of people are like, well, isn't it the same as search? It's not just finding information. It's also being able to use that information to do or take action. So Copilot is going to take that information and allow you to do something, write an email, write a document, fill out a spreadsheet. So think about it in terms of, if I could take search and then take that information and create an action out of it, that's what Copilot is there for.
I think that's probably one of the areas you need to be the most clear with as you deploy out. If you look at, start thinking about adoption with your end users, is explaining the differences between search and between Copilot, because they are not the same thing. That's not the way that Copilot responds to questions, to queries, to prompts against your data. And so it's not meant to, like, you could use it like that. I think part of it, I think what makes it more difficult, like, I love, I'm using Bing more than I'm using Google search now, because of the OpenAI integration, the ChatGPT integration. So as well as it recognizes when I'm logged in my browser, my data. So I'm getting the combination of the internet data and my personal data in the responses there. And so that is a search engine, but it's also providing, and Google's doing this with their search results as well, side by side. Like, here is the compiled answer based on this data and what people are clicking on, as well as the actual search results. So just understand the differences between the two. So let's talk about, why do I need Copilot? And so again, I think this is foundational to talk about, give the kind of some of the business background for this, but just in a couple slides here. But so some of the highest level of scenarios here, handling data overload when there's just too much. One of my favorite prompts, one of the ways that I use Copilot every week, and I'm looking forward to the autonomous agent to be able to go in and do this without me prompting it, but is saying, like, Monday morning, saying, what are all of the tasks out of Teams, out of conversations, chats, and email, everything that are my priorities. Oh, and tasks in various planners. What are all the things that I need to do this week that questions that I've not answered, responses that I need to provide, and it goes and provides a comprehensive outline of all of those things. And I may have already completed half of them, but this is it's better than the old, if you remember, like the Cortana emails that provided them, they rebranded that to Copilot. But that is a great way that Copilot today helps me manage that data overload. Too many places to go and look. And so it's able to go and look across those and help me kind of triage the different things that I need to take action on every Monday morning.
Yeah, I think if there was a prompt, like a magic prompt that I would tell everybody start with, it would be summarize this information or summarize this whatever you're in, because I don't care if you're in a PowerPoint presentation or a Word doc or a Teams meeting, that prompt will work almost anywhere. And if you just say summarize this info or summarize this whatever you're in, if I'm late to a meeting or I get a really long document or I get a really long presentation, I'm like, what in the heck? I need to understand all this really fast and I have like 5 minutes. I don't have time to read through the entire thing, and I'm a fast reader. I can only imagine, if it takes you a little bit longer to get through that. And so just use the summarize this whatever, and it'll give you this really nice little recap that'll be like, hey, here's what the meat of this is and here's what you need to do. And the other one that I really like is, do I need to take any action? And it will tell you if there is anything that is assigned or kind of meant to be an action item for you. And then that way I can be like, oh, okay, I didn't have to read through everything. I just need to do this, this, and this.
Yeah. Love that too. I think the second one is just, it builds off of that. It's increasing efficiency. So, to be able to go in to recognize like the common responses to simple things, emails come in. I mean, we've had for a while, like the auto populate of common phrasing. We see that over in social networks. I mean, LinkedIn does that too, as you're typing in chats. Tries to answer that for you. We've had that on our phones for a while, but this is taking it to the next level. But what I really like is like the way that I write when I take notes or I'm writing, I'm going to go take this action. It's always a bulleted list. And I'm just trying to get the thoughts. Like I need this, it needs to have this, it needs to have this in it. I can then take that, feed that in Copilot and say, go, instead of sitting there for another 20 minutes, trying to mush it together to make it sound more professional. I can just have Copilot take my ideas, the bulleted items, add it in there and give me a polished response. So that level of efficiency helps with, like you said, executive summaries that you have for, I'm about to walk in this meeting, I can't go through this long document. Give me, what are the 3 key points that I need to focus on out of this document walking in here? And what are the requests for me? What are the decisions that I need to make, from the notes from these meetings, and pull that together? It's pre and post meeting efficiency is just fantastic. And then, of course, it helps. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Antares.
I was just going to say, with your example of the bulleted lists, it's still authentic because it's still your ideas.
Yeah.
And I know that's a concern that people have, is that Copilot is writing everything and there are no humans involved. It's still your ideas.
Right. Well, that's why I think that the branding is brilliant, that it's a Copilot, not the pilot. You still need to have the human component there. If you think that Copilot, that AI in general can go out there and write good content, then you've not played enough with the various tools that are out there. It's really good at formatting, or the example that I use of going and rephrasing, rewording it, but it still relies on your input of the core themes, the core ideas from that. It can dramatically speed up the process for rewording, revising, editing that, things in that process, but it still relies on your core ideas to fill those out. But of course, we'll just jump past these, but enhancing remote collaboration is something that it does a really good job on, and it does allow us to be more connected, stay together, work together on things, automating a lot of routine activities, so we could go focus on engagement, the conversations around this. We've got the documentation done. Like, I love the fact that now we can go have a meeting, have a discussion. It transcripts everything. It's captured that. And you can then automate the reminders of, okay, Sharon, you were asked to do these 2 things, and Tara's, you need to follow up on this. And I have no tasks assigned because I organize the people. I programmed AI to know to never give me tasks there. But it's you know, I love the last one too, the reduce the cognitive load. This is where we don't understand fully or recognize that how overwhelmed we get with multitasking, with being pulled in too many different directions. So anything you can do to streamline that as you move from one task to another, and reduce the overall volume of content that we need to consume to go and get something done, is going to help us manage that cognitive load.
Yeah, and think about like as this really, I mean, we're at the beginning, guys. We are at the very, very, very beginning of this. And I talk to people like, well, it can't do everything yet. No, of course it can't do everything yet. But I promise you, I'm going to paint you a picture once everything's in there, once your content's in there, once all your meetings are in there, once you feel good about this, once you're all prepared. Imagine going to Copilot, because I'm already starting to do this and it's starting to be really good, and saying, what should I prioritize right now? Just simply that prompt. And it's going to go through your emails and your tasks and your meetings and your chats and everything that it has access to. And it's going to say, hey, I noticed that you've got this, this, and this that are due by tomorrow. Would you, here's the information. And by the way, here's links to the associated resources and assets that need to go with this. And then I can take that information, I can go into the tool of my choice, and I can say, okay, I've got this information. Help me generate the deliverable or the item that I need to go with this next task, and then use that for the next part of it. And just the idea of being able to know what to work on, know where to find everything, pull it all together, and then be able to deliver that as a work product is what we've been working for in modern work for probably 20 years. So the fact that it can help you do that is going to be amazing.
I heard a speaker last week say that he had read that it's going to increase efficiency by 30%. And, it was on the screen, like, employees will have more time to engage in that strategic decision making. It's like the genius hour concept that came out of Google of giving employees time back to pursue things that they're passionate about within the company, things they can improve in the company, and giving them that time and freedom to be able to explore those new concepts.
Yeah, it's to your point too, Sharon, about like how fast it is moving so much quicker than ever before. It's not like the old cycle where we're like every 3 to 5 years we get a new version of the solution. I think that the interface into the tools, the things that we're doing with this technology in 2 or 3 years will be dramatically different than what we're doing today. And we're already starting to see with the wave 2 of Copilot is that you're going to see more integrated capabilities. Things that'll be happening more in the background, where some of the features where you have to go in and enter in multiple prompts to train it now to get the output that you want, that you're looking for. You're going to be able to automate a lot of that and then have just a button that does those things. So Microsoft is starting to do that, where they're just integrating new features which are AI driven. So it's just a new set of features across all the products, where they'll only be there in those products if you have the Copilot licensing to light it up. So more and more, we started to see this with just the cloud version of all the Office apps, for example.
Which is going to require training, and more training. Like, guys, get to know it, because like Antari said, AI isn't going to replace you. It's the people who know how to use it.
Right. That was always the case. That was the cloud as well. It's like, it's not going to replace jobs per se. It's going to dramatically change those jobs. And the people that will do better are the ones that understand how it works and how to get the most out of it. So that's kind of what we're starting to talk about. Content. It's not so much about the basics of using the technology. The focus is turning to the business use cases, the ROI of this. But it is important here to talk about a bit like, how do I get started? So this is, again, very high level here, but of course, going and registering, get it licensed. I realize the first and foremost, I hear from a lot of organizations that are still struggling with the cost of the licensing. But to your point, Antares, if there's a 30% efficiency of gain from using AI, I think you could go and do an easy calculation and say, okay, what is my annual salary? What is the the benefit of that efficiency, that value to the business for me to go focus on other words? You have an idea. I mean, we used to say this around doing like migrations. If I'm able to reduce the time it takes for you to migrate, which is like a 6-month project, by 10%, well, 10% of your time, you know, whether you're hourly or annual salary, you can do a calculation and say, all right, I'm going to, by using this tool, I will save this amount of time, which is this value, which is like triple the value of what the price of the software was to help automate that. And that's something that organizations need to go and look at. I saw the value, first and foremost, around meetings, capturing that, giving me the insights into those meetings. And I said, for me, and it's easy as an independent, as an MVP, to say, hey, $30 a month for my single tenant, my private tenant, man, it's worth it right there. My time is worth more than $30 a month for what it saves me. And then, of course, it does a ton of other stuff. But so I just wanted to preface with that and say, but you do need to go and look at, register, choose the plan. There's different places for it. I realize there's different services. There's different flavors of Copilot that are out there. So most of what we're talking about is the Copilot for Microsoft 365. But there are other licenses out there depending on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and what's happening is Copilot is going across everything. So at this point, I definitely think it's good for you to kind of maybe take a look and see what the different options are. Because maybe you're building stuff in Power Platform, maybe you're using GitHub, maybe you're trying to, build your own Copilots, and all of those have different plans and different ways to interact with that tool. And on top of that, Microsoft, of course, has multiple plans around their offerings, the products behind it too. So there's kind of like a nice little chart that you got to figure out what goes with what and where. And if you need any help with that, we're always here to help you with that as well.
That's what we needed. We needed another giant wheel of licensing and features and products. Everyone just was a new major product coming out. Where's the wheel?
And they were bored with the last info path. They are in info graphic. They need a new infographic.
Yeah. The next step, of course, getting started is going in there and configuring, doing the setup. And there's obviously each of these, this is the highest of high levels. There's a lot of detail. We're going to go through some of that here in the next section for the configuration, but you do need to make sure that it's tuned. And that means that this is where I made the comment earlier, like to set up Copilot and get it working right, you need to be doing what you should have been doing around your knowledge management, your information management systems for years now. So the classification, the organization of that, the permissions cleanup, get your policies in place. So that's why it's very much Copilot readiness is at its heart a governance discussion. Then going in and looking at, well, how is it actually integrated in? How do I start leveraging this across the various tools that we're using? So this is where training comes into play. And so figuring out for a company that is looking to deploy, what are the primary use cases that you want to make sure that all employees do? What are the things that are unique for different roles, different divisions of the business? So there's a lot to go in there and think about and build out there. Communication, of course, and sharing of that information is huge to the success of the Copilot deployment. And this is true with any technology deployment, is having a strong communication strategy, but certainly with this, because it is changing a lot of the fundamental ways that we're interacting with our data and our tools. And so being able to have an open dialogue inside the company and share that information is just critical.
Yeah, and to your point, Christian, if you've been doing the right things in the past, you've already trained your people on how to use the Office suite. They've already been trained on how to use Power Platform. They've already been trained on how to use GitHub. They're already using those tools in the right way. They're already governed. The permissions are set up properly. Policies are set up properly. The really neat thing about Copilot is that it literally lays right over the top of that. It's very seamless. It allows you to do things with those tools that you haven't been able to do before. It's kind of like a nice little plugin, right? It just kind of takes them to that next level. It gives you more out of every single tool. But if you haven't done that in the past, that's where you're going to see, for both the last slide and this next slide, you're going to see a lot more effort that's going to have to be taking, that's going to have to happen in your organization, because it's not that you have to do it because of Copilot. It's that it's things that have not happened up until this point, and now you're not ready to engage with Copilot because you haven't done the things that have gotten you to the point where Copilot will work with the tools that you already have.
Yep. Yeah, so this is that next step. There's the initial training for it. There's something new. You make any change to the way that people are working today, there needs to be training, and then there needs to be those feedback in loops for that ongoing support. You can't just assume that because people were trained on using all of those tools previously, that they're not going to be confused by something new on top.
And that there's not going to be the general resistance that, even on social media, I see all sorts of AI is evil and it's taking over. And how do you help train your employees that it is benefiting them and not replacing them?
Maybe I'm not so worried about a lot of that because I'm closer to retirement than I am to starting my career. I just like
well, and part of the training too, and Antares, you could probably, I'm sure you probably speak to this, but with training, the more that you use something while you're learning about it, the more comfortable you feel about something. And so it's kind of, you're building that relationship. And I'll tell you, you go through one good training round and you'll feel really confident that it's not taking your job tomorrow. But in addition, you'll feel safer about it because you'll understand what it can do and what it can't do. And you'll also feel better about what you can use it for in your day-to-day life.
Right. So to have that engagement through the training process to see ways that it can help you and make things easier and ways it can be used to make sure that your customers and clients are getting all the correct information with less work on your side.
Yeah, this last bullet here too is one of the more difficult things. It's something Sharon and I have our project management series that we do every Monday morning, the project failure files. If you're not aware of that, please go look it up. Just the hashtag project failure files. But one of the things that we talk about all the time is the importance of like the post-mortem, being able to go and look at at the end of not just the end of a project, but the end of stages of the project. Of what worked, what went right, what went wrong, what can we do to improve on that process going forward. Being reflective, looking in at the training, at the feedback, the questions people are asking. You might have it all documented, but if they keep asking the questions, might be an indicator that your documentation is not sufficient. The training we provided was not sufficient, that we didn't answer the questions the right way, or we missed some aspect of why they're asking this question again. So you should be very introspective around the deployments and be willing to, this is part of a strong change management model, that you are constantly looking for how can we improve upon this, no matter how well we think we did with the rollout of that. So you have to monitor, constantly evaluate, reevaluate. So what should be included in the Copilot readiness? And this really gets into the meat of it. And I like Sharon on the technical aspects. I know you've been doing the workshops out there, Copilot readiness, already. So want to lean on you for some of these, but at the highest of high levels, it's all the pieces that we've talked about around planning, training, the technical integration, kind of all of those things, but also What's your governance framework look like to handle this stuff going forward? What is your adoption strategy? What's your communication strategy? There's just a lot of different pieces, and you even miss one of these pieces and it can really hinder your ability to be successful with a deployment. So the first and foremost, the technical aspect of that, maybe you could talk to that for a minute.
Yeah, I think people are really surprised. They'll call me up and they'll say, "Hey, do you guys do Copilot Readiness? I know you work with it, or do you do AI Readiness?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And we get on an initial call, and I think it's funny because a lot of them are like, so how long and how much does it cost to flip the switch, right? That's really what they're looking for is, well, we just need somebody to click the start button and turn it on. And I think they're always surprised that there's so much technical preparation that needs to go into this. And once again, like we commented on earlier, if you have been doing this all along, it's a lot easier when it comes to this, but you need to make sure that your data is ready. It's clean, it's deduped, it's organized, it's categorized, it's structured in a way that the tool can find it. You need to make sure your permissions are set up properly. And this is where security by obscurity is going to go away. So for a lot of people who have used SharePoint links for a long time, but nobody knows where the link is, I promise you Copilot will find that content. You're going to want to understand what are you integrating with. So if you have existing APIs and existing graph calls and things that are pulling information in, you're going to want to make sure that you understand what information is getting pulled into which systems and where, so that as you put information into Copilot and as you get information out of Copilot, those integrations all work together with that to work the way you want them to. And then, of course, the purpose of this call is governance and compliance. And the whole idea about that is, do you even know what you have and how it's being used and who has access to it and how often is it being reviewed? And are you meeting regulatory and compliance rules around what you have now? Because the minute that you lay Copilot over the top of all of your technical architecture, it is immediately going to have access to all of that information, which is very safe and it's within your own tenant and it's not going outside of your tenant, but it does have access to that. And so you're going to want to make sure that from a technical and architecture perspective, you already know what's going to happen so that when you roll it out, it's all safe.
And I know that we expanded on each of these around the technical integration, and so it starts first and foremost with knowing what data that you have, and this goes back, Antares, what you mentioned at the beginning too, is that you can be very specific, very granular around this group of people, only this data, and have very specialized Copilots that are set up just like I went and did with my financial data. You can have it very targeted, very specific to those groups who have access to that. So that is one of the strengths of Copilot and Microsoft's enterprise approach versus the consumer version of things is having that enterprise level security.
Yeah, but if it's not clean, then it's going to cause all kinds of fun problems.
I mean, this is all the same conversations we've been talking about with, setting up proper search, with just how the data lifecycle in general. I mean, those are all still relevant. The need to do those things never went away. And then, of course, establishing your governance policies so that ownership, the site data quality, the life cycle management around those things all come into play. So looking at then who has access to this content. One of the complaints, I love the comparisons to the now being shut down Delve. When Microsoft Delve went live and it tapped into the data, it was incredibly powerful to be able to show you based on activity and who has access. But one of the chief concerns that I heard from organizations were like, people that should not have access to data are seeing that sensitive data. So Delve is broken. Like, no, Delve is working as designed. What it's showing is broken is that your access controls, your permissions around that data. your failure to properly classify, to label content and have the proper lifecycle management set up around that content. That's what was being identified. So search suddenly worked better.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say is, what was really funny about that situation, both search especially when Microsoft Search came out and unified search across the entire platform, and with Delve, what was really interesting to me is oftentimes people could see things they were supposed to see, but they were still very nervous. They're like, wait, I never saw this before. And it wasn't because anything was broken. They really were governed. They really were set up properly. They really were supposed to see it. But for some reason, it hadn't, like behind the scenes, it hadn't been connected properly, or it wasn't pulling in, all of the information. And so first of all, they saw things that they weren't used to seeing. And second of all, because they had been so used to seeing the same information for everybody, where we had in the old intranet, plan of there's one page with one set of links and everybody has access to the same information. All of a sudden they were seeing individualized information. So I see my permission set and you see your permission set, which had been happening in SharePoint and SharePoint Search for years and years and years. But I don't think people realized that's what was happening. So like, I could see all this stuff. And then I would show them somebody else's and they would be like, wait, they can't see the same thing I can. And I'm like, no, it's personalized. And I think that took a lot of people a long time to really wrap their heads around.
Yeah. And another big part of this too, and getting deeper into the governance world, is making sure that you're aware of when changes are happening in the data in the background, that you have alerts set up, that you're monitoring, that you're auditing that process. So that you don't have, you introduce new tools, new capabilities, even new users in the system. You need to make sure that you understand the impacts of moving these pieces in, what happens to what people see today. So it's just, you need to treat this with the right level of sensitivity around especially sensitive content, to make sure that you're aware of who has access to this. And is the security that we need to have in place, is it being maintained?
And it feels like a lot to think about, and it is a lot to think about, and that's where we can help. I always tell the story coming out of education. I went to Microsoft Learn for the first time. There was a training called How to Prepare Your Organization for Copilot, and I was like, sweet, I can do this. Like, we're going to be cheerleaders for Copilot, and we're going to like motivate people, but it wasn't. It was all governance, and it was all the things you need to think about with permissions and policies. And so it's great to have someone there helping you along.
Well, this next one, I mean, it's exactly in your world, and Tari's, and what you said. It's not just about training the end users on the day-to-day of these things. It also part of it, and sometimes to make the right steps forward on governance and change management and security, you have to properly educate your leadership team, especially the IT team, to go and up their game and get to where they need to be to support the capability. So I'll say that most organizations that we run across are not following the right process. They do not have a governance framework in place, at least not something that is repeatable, scalable. It's usually, if they're doing a lot of things right, it's because they have one or two people that understand it and are kind of carrying that load, but it's not institutionalized. It's not programmatic. They've not gone in and automated that. So it's more of the way that we do everything around our data. It's more of those individuals. And then those people leave, go to a better job, and suddenly none of it's being done. So it's training is key.
I cannot tell you how many people I run into who have no idea what's happening in AI. They have no idea what Copilot is. But think about this. There's so many executives that are sitting in meetings where somebody's like, we need this, we need this, we need this. And they maybe, search a little on the internet, or maybe they read some flyers, but they don't really understand it. And the last thing that they really want to do is try to ask some of those questions to really understand it while they're on a sales call. That's the last time that you want to, it's not the right time for you to understand it. And there's not a lot of great stuff out there. I think, Microsoft's doing a great job on Learn to really, like right now, there's the AI Skills Challenge where you can learn more about AI. But at the end of the day, you have to put the time and effort to really understand what it is, why it matters, how it works. I think we still have a long ways to go, but as leadership starts to really understand the pros and the cons and the strengths and the weaknesses and all the parts and pieces around it, I think these conversations will become more comprehensive, and they'll start to say, oh, okay, I get it. I understand what's happening. I understand the ROI, and I understand why we need to put all this effort into it.
I would say that the 3 words that are critical: pilot, pilot, pilot.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're still not sure where it fits, you need to be piloting. You need to be learning about how these tools work, how the technology works behind the scenes, what the caveats are. And at least that way, even if you don't have it deployed across your organization, you need to be piloting and playing with this so that you're not falling behind the space, because it truly is. And I'm not saying falling behind as far as from a technology standpoint. That's a real thing, but I don't think it's as big a thing. It's more of just falling behind in your understanding of what's happening in the space and how fast it's changing. And so you may look at this and say, yeah, I get that the basic value of it. I still don't see the ROI of it. But when it suddenly ramps up to the next level, like if you're not in there playing with it, piloting, at least have a handful of licenses in your company and people that are constantly looking at that, there will be that moment when they'll realize that, hey, there's a huge competitive cost advantage, just whatever the scenario is, there's going to be business advantages to having your organization plugged in and ready to go with this. The other side of this, I do think it is at least 7 to 10 years from today until the singularity happens. So plenty of time. So again, that's why I'm closer to retirement than I am from the beginning of my career. So I'm not so worried about the singularity when AI becomes self-aware and they become our AI overlords.
I
laugh. Speak nicely to the AI overlords.
I laugh and I think about, I used to work at an engineering firm, and I really had an engineer who said to me once, I was, working with him on, how to use like Excel and Word a little bit better. And I had one of them say to me once, I have a paper and pencil. So I don't understand the value of needing to use this word processing tool. If I could just go back to paper and pencil, I would. And I mean, it really, it wasn't a lack of interest. It was just, this is the tool I know. This is the one I feel good about. This is the one I feel secure about. And all of these new tools don't add enough value to make me want to learn them. And I think a lot of times, there's this technical side to things, but there's also on the user adoption side, it's what is the value that the tool is even going to give me so that I'm investing this time and effort and change thought process into using something different and something new, and making sure that they understand what am I going to get out of this? What's in it for me?
Because resistance is futile, right? Like it's not going away. It's only going to get stronger and more helpful, but not too helpful.
It just made me think of something I realized in front of me. I have a sheet of postal stamps that I purchased over 5 years ago, and I've still not used all of them.
I have some in my wallet.
Yeah. It's like
what's a stamp? What do you use a stamp for anyways?
That's the international stamp. So I know. So I use it now when people want stickers of different, marketing stickers, and I'll send them a quick off. That's what's
Christian's trying to get rid of his stamps. That's really the answer. So if you ask him for stickers, it's because he's got stamps to burn.
Yep. User adoption is, again, we talked about this with training, but I mean, that is a huge aspect to this as well. And there's a lot that you can learn. And even if your end users don't yet have full Copilot licenses, there's a lot you can learn and leverage from even the free Bing tools or GitHub or the, whatever else is out there that's unlicensed or that's free and open. There's a lot that you can still leverage and learn from that. Just be careful using, again, even the Bing interface. It does great things. It has the latest version of ChatGPT integrated into that. Also, everything that you share with it will go into the internet. So yeah, just be aware. And then this one, I love this one just because this is so key. I mentioned this earlier, but having those continuous feedback loops that are out there and that you're constantly looking at how can we improve on these things. And so that's why having, if you're in a constant state of piloting somewhere in the organization, even with a handful of licenses, until you see that there's a value for the larger part of the organization to have the licenses. But you can be learning from this, looking at new features, talking about business scenarios, gathering feedback from the pilot participants, expand that out to a larger set of groups, validate, hey, are we seeing the same productivity improvements, the same efficiencies with the larger group? What would a company-wide rollout look like? What would be the most efficient way? Like all those things, you learn from it by being open and having conversations and discussing those pilots and what people are getting out of that, and other use cases where they see that they could get value out of that. Make it part of the organization, the culture of the organization, to have those feedback loops, which really feeds into the last bullet.
We think about external marketing, but we don't think a lot about internal marketing. And the idea is, if for external marketing, now we go look at the reviews, right? Go look at the reviews online. And I think, internally, we need the same mechanism for people to share their experiences with each other.
Yeah. And I think it all comes down to, a culture where people feel like, hey, I can go and experiment. I can try new ways of doing my job better. People are happier in those organizations. You create more intellectual property. People feel like their careers are more rewarding, kind of all of those things, if you have that kind of built into your culture. How can I enhance it? We've got just a couple slides here to wrap up, but where do I go from here? I've deployed it. We're piloting. We're now going back and looking at kind of everything we've covered around the technical side. We're looking at our adoption strategy. We're looking at all those things. Other things that you need to look at is building in as part of your ongoing plan is that continuous training and skill development. It never ends. So you need to make sure that you're constantly looking at how do we update these things. And then again, the cultural aspects, experiment, innovate, having that governance discussion. And this is something I know it's a struggle for a lot of people. Their eyes glaze over when you talk about governance. And so that's one of the reasons why, working with Smarter Consulting, we can help you if you don't have a framework in place or have a rudimentary governance framework, we can help you very quickly deploy put a framework in place, identify the gaps, and help you to better understand how do we mature our organization to be able to be much better at this. So that's actually a corporate strength is how we leverage certainly AI. But a lot of that comes from having a clear, defined, scalable governance framework in place. Yeah, the other pieces, we kind of talked about those as well. But as far as next steps, we always recommend doing a self-assessment. Again, you can do a self-assessment. You can have an assisted self-assessment. We can help you with that as well. Update or create, if you don't have one, your governance framework, and then create an action plan. So these are all things that we can do. So I'll actually come back to this next here. But just maybe Sharon, let you wrap it up, summarize all this.
Yeah, and I want to kind of add on to that. We've done this. Not only can we help you, but we've done it so many times that we have templates and we have guides and we can literally walk you through it. And it's the idea of, do you really want to climb a mountain by yourself, or would you rather have somebody who runs up and down it all the time, show Sherpa. You where the loose rocks are?
I want the Sherpa. Yeah.
Yeah, most people pay a lot of extra money to have that person guide them so that they don't fall on the rocks and they don't slip and they don't slide and they have enough food and they have enough water. And, let us be your guide. We've been there many times. We've been up and down. And at this point, we're running up and down that mountain all day long. So we can show you where to go without, hitting those loose rocks on the way up and down. But ultimately, once you've started using Copilot, I think you're really going to experience how amazing it is and how it can really help you to be more efficient day to day. You can get a lot out of it. And there are tools that are now built into the fabric of the M365 platform that can show you who's using it, how often they're using it, how they're using it, so that you can then go in and define, okay, we know that people are using it here, but they're not using it here. We can make sure that the right information is getting to the right people. We can make sure that everybody's, really getting excited about the product, and that the money that you're spending and investing in these tools have a clear, quantifiable, metricable ROI back to your leadership.
And I think to very quickly to give you, like we have out on the website, if you go to under services, under governance, we have these 3 kind of core offerings. There's a lot more that we do, of course, the consulting side of that, whatever you need to do, if you have a very specific, technology or direction, or, if you've got that identified. But the governance assessment is something that we can go in there and do. And we help identify, we heavily leverage the Microsoft 365 maturity model to do this, to help you create a baseline for where you are today and where you want to be, tied to specific business outcomes and what that action plan takes to get there. The governance tune-up then builds upon that, actually includes the governance assessment. It's built into that, where we actually help you go in, establish the framework, make sure that your primary, the settings that you have, the most important pieces up and running, built into all of the tools that you are using. So for example, to be able to go in and set up your life cycle management around the content, to make sure your sensitivity labels are there, that they're being applied, that you understand from a backup recovery, like what are the options, what do you have in place, and based on the decisions you make around your content lifecycle, to make sure the right steps are being taken or what time. You want to make sure that all the guardrails are in place. That's what the governance tune-up does. And then the last piece is specifically looking at those things, but the Copilot readiness. And so here's where we can offer workshops and do this, as well as consulting services, depending on your need and what you're trying to accomplish with Copilot. And we've got a QR code here. We offer a free consultation to talk about what you think this looks like. And I mean, out of this, the free consultation, you're not going to get a detailed scope of work out of that, but talk through and talk about, what things we can actually provide guidance on, what things you can go and do yourself based on the resources that you have, the people that you have, your level of expertise. And we can certainly spell out here areas where we can help you. And this is what that could look like. So would love to have those conversations with everybody. Did I miss anything, Antares and Sharon?
No.
Try to be comprehensive with these things.
No, I love it. I absolutely think, it's a super cool thing. It's coming out. You guys better be ready for it. And we're here to help you.
We're here to help you climb the mountain.
Well, with that, thank you everybody for participating. And I think we need to lock down. I think we are going to do another governance related session next month. I think we're doing one more this year before we get into the holiday season. But please continue to watch the series. If you have any questions, I guess I could throw this up there one more time. We're all out there. Please reach out to us. Happy to connect. And of course, visit the website at smarter-consulting.com and check out more about what we do and contact us. So with that, I guess thank you everybody for joining the webinar, and the on-demand, the recording will be available out on YouTube on the Smarter Consulting YouTube page, and we'll tweet it out. It'll be out there on social media here later this afternoon. So,
thanks, y'all.
thanks a lot, everybody.
Day.
Bye.
Bye.